Welcome back to the deep dive. For this deep dive, you shared Leil Lowndes' book, How to Talk to Anyone.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It's packed with communication techniques.
It is, yeah.
Practical ones. So we're going to try to extract the most valuable ones, like the kind that can instantly upgrade your communication.
Right.
You know, I noticed right away that Lowndes really emphasizes how first impressions are formed before you even say a word.
Oh, yeah.
Like your nonverbal communication is already doing so much of the work.
Definitely. And the book, it's interesting how it explains that people, they actually have those emotional reactions before their brain even, like, fully processes what's happening.
Yeah, it's like instinct, right?
Right.
It is. It's fascinating. She even tells a story about this caricature artist,
Uh-huh.
Bob, I think his name was, and he says he can accurately sketch someone's personality just from observing them for like 30 seconds.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know.
Yeah.
So we're always sending signals, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of signals, one of the first techniques that stood out to me was the flooding smile. Have you heard of this?
Oh, yeah, the flooding smile, yeah. It's about timing,
Yeah.
you know? You don't just immediately grin when you greet someone. You sort of pause, make eye contact, and then let this warm, genuine smile just spread across your face.
I see. So it's more of a slow, warm kind of smile.
Like a wave, yeah.
Not just a flash of teeth.
Right, exactly, yeah. It makes it feel more personal, like it's just for them, you know?
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and she even tells a story about her college friend Missy, who used this technique, among others,
Oh, wow.
to transform her communication style. And she eventually became a successful CEO named Melissa.
So it's like a subtle shift,
It is, yeah.
but a powerful one.
Yeah.
Okay, now the book also dives deep into the power of eye contact,
Oh, yeah.
which we all know is important. But she talks about sticky eyes,
Yes.
which is how maintaining strong eye contact can make you seem more intelligent and create a connection.
And there's research behind it, too. Studies have shown that people who hold eye contact are seen as more intelligent, more likable.
Really?
Yeah. There was even this one study where they had people count their partner's blinks during a conversation.
Oh, wow.
And the ones who kept strong eye contact were rated higher in respect and fondness by their partners.
Wow, that's fascinating. It really shows you
Yeah.
how these tiny cues can have such an impact.
A big impact.
Okay, speaking of eye contact, she also talks about this technique called epoxy eyes,
Oh, yeah.
which is a little bit...
It's a little intense, yeah.
Yeah.
This one's about watching the person you're interested in, even when someone else is talking.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine it's very effective for captivating someone, especially romantically.
Yeah, I can see how that could be powerful, but also like a little awkward or even creepy
Oh, for sure.
if it's not done right.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that one, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, read the room, as they say.
Right, definitely. Okay, so we've got the eyes down, but Lowndes also talks about this visualization technique to project confidence called hang by your teeth.
Yeah.
Have you tried this one?
I have. It's really clever. So imagine before you walk through any door, you're biting on an invisible bit
Okay.
that's hanging from the frame. It forces you to lift your head,
Oh,
straighten your spine, pull those shoulders back.
so instant good posture.
Yeah, instantly.
Mhm.
And good posture, you know, it just screams confidence.
It does, and we walk through doorways like 100 times a day, probably.
Right.
So if you do that every time, it's
You'll
gonna
be standing tall all the time.
Yeah, you're gonna reprogram yourself. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
One of the things that really hit home for me was the story of Clever Hans. You know, that horse that supposedly could do math.
Oh, yeah. Clever Hans. What a story.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out he was actually responding to subtle, unconscious cues from his handler.
Right. So it wasn't that Hans was a math genius, but he was so perceptive.
Super perceptive.
Like, he could read his handler's body language
Yeah.
and know when to stop tapping his hoof.
Yeah.
It just shows you how much we might be missing in our own interactions.
It really does.
Yeah.
We should all be more observant, like Clever Hans, but maybe not with math problems.
Yeah, maybe with people instead.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's another technique we can use to become better communication detectives?
Well, since you mentioned being observant, let's talk about parroting. This one's great for small talk, which, let's face it, a lot of people dread.
Oh, yeah.
It basically involves repeating back key words or phrases from what the other person just said to encourage them to elaborate.
So if someone says, I saw a movie this weekend,
Right.
you might say,
You'd be like, oh, a movie. Which one?
exactly.
Simple as that.
And it shows you're listening
Yeah.
and interested, but it also takes the pressure off you to come up with some brilliant response.
Exactly. And you never know where the conversation will go.
Ah.
Lowndes tells a story about using parroting during a car ride, and she ended up having this fascinating conversation about the musical Sweeney Todd,
Oh,
just from repeating a couple of phrases.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got to talk about Never the Naked City.
Oh, Never the Naked City. Yeah. This one's all about tailoring your conversation to your audience. Like a fisherman uses different bait for different fish.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. So instead of just saying, I'm from Washington, D.C.,
Right.
you might mention that it was designed by the same city planner as Paris.
Oh.
If you're talking to someone who's into art and architecture,
I see. So you're finding that common ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like if you meet someone from Columbus, Ohio, you could mention all the other towns named Columbus across the U.S.
That's a good one.
It's about those little points of connection that
Yeah.
keep a conversation flowing.
I love that. This is making me really think about how I approach conversations. Before we wrap up this part, though, there's one more technique I want to touch on. The nutshell resume.
Oh, yes.
It's about going beyond just stating your job title
Right.
and really highlighting what you do and how it benefits others.
Exactly. So instead of just saying, I'm a financial planner, you might say something like, I help people secure their financial futures. Makes it more relatable.
I love that. The book gives examples for all sorts of professions, like a real estate agent becomes someone who helps people find their dream homes.
Yeah.
A hairdresser becomes someone who helps women find the perfect hairstyle.
Yeah.
It's about finding that so what of your work
The why, yeah.
and expressing it in a way that resonates.
Absolutely.
Wow, we've covered so much already.
I know, right? It's amazing how much is packed into this book.
This feels like a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, let's take a break and come back for more. It's funny how we just default to those basic introductions.
Yeah.
I'm a this or I'm a that.
Totally. Like nobody wants to hear, I'm an accountant at a party.
Exactly. And that's where the nutshell resume comes in.
Right.
It's about crafting a description that focuses on how your work helps others instead of just stating a dry job title.
I like that.
Yeah, so instead of, I'm a financial planner, you could say, I help people secure their financial futures.
Much better.
It makes it instantly more relatable.
Right.
And the book gives so many great examples. A real estate agent becomes someone who helps people find their dream homes.
Yeah.
A hairdresser becomes someone who helps women find the perfect hairstyle.
It's about connecting with people's needs.
Yeah, it's about the why
Yeah.
behind your work, not just the what.
I love that. And speaking of connecting with people's desires, Lowndes talks about communication, which really caught my eye.
Oh yeah, communication.
Yeah.
It's all about using the word you frequently to put the focus on the other person.
Okay.
It taps into this thing she calls the pleasure pain principle, which basically means people are always looking for pleasure and trying to avoid pain. So instead of saying, I think this Italian restaurant is great, you might say, you'll love the amazing pasta dishes at this new Italian place.
I see.
You're putting them at the center of the experience
Right.
and appealing to their desire for something enjoyable.
Interesting. It's so subtle.
It is, but it can make a big difference.
Yeah, and she gives that example of convincing a friend to try an Indian restaurant by framing it in a way that addressed all of her friend's potential concerns beforehand.
Oh, that's a good one.
I know, it worked like a charm. But sometimes, even when we're trying to connect, our conversations can fall flat.
For sure.
And Lowndes just points out this major communication killer,
What's that?
cliches.
Oh, cliches, yeah.
We're all guilty of it.
Oh, absolutely. We all fall into those traps.
Yeah.
It's like reaching for the laziest phrase instead of putting in the effort to be original.
Yeah, it makes you sound unoriginal and uninspired.
Exactly.
Lowndes really encourages us to come up with our own unique expressions.
She does, but she also acknowledges that coming up with witty remarks on the spot can be tough.
It can be, yeah.
So she introduces this idea of Joss Smith's jive.
Okay, Joss Smith's jive.
Love the name, right?
Yeah.
It's all about studying the speeches and writings of great communicators, collecting those quotable phrases and anecdotes that you can adapt to your own style.
So it's like building your own mental library of clever responses.
Exactly. It's like having a secret stash of verbal ammunition.
I love it. She even shares an anecdote about an executive who used a Jackie Mason joke
Oh, wow.
to lighten the mood in a tense financial meeting.
Nice.
It totally shifted the energy.
That's great.
Okay, shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
One of the things I found most helpful was the YIFM principle.
Ah, yes. What's in it for me? It's that idea that people are always subconsciously evaluating what benefits they'll get out of any interaction.
Even in casual conversations.
Even in casual conversations.
Wow.
Lowndes suggests being upfront about the YFM, both for you and the other person, even if it's something small.
So you're acknowledging that we all have motivations.
Right. It's about transparency and respecting the other person's time.
Right.
She has this great example about extending a lunch invitation and being upfront about the fact that there wasn't a huge benefit for the other person, but just acknowledging the YFM made her come across as more honest and considerate.
Yeah, people appreciate that honesty.
Definitely. It builds trust.
It does. Okay, let's talk about asking for favors.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's favorite topic.
Right, because it can be so awkward.
It can be. But Lowndes has some great tips on how to make it feel more natural.
Okay, I'm all ears.
She suggests framing your request in a way that highlights its importance to you.
So instead of just stating the request,
Yeah.
you're emphasizing why it would mean a lot if they could help.
Exactly. You're appealing to their desire to be helpful. And she also reminds us that there's this unspoken favor scorecard in every relationship.
Oh, yeah.
We keep track of who's done what for whom, even if we don't talk about it.
It's about maintaining that balance of give and take.
Exactly. And she advises waiting a while before asking for a return favor so it doesn't feel transactional.
Right, like you're not just keeping score.
Exactly. Now, we've been focusing a lot on face-to-face communication, but so much of our interaction happens remotely these days.
That's true.
And Lowndes has some great insights on how to communicate effectively over the phone.
Okay, like what?
Well, without our facial expressions and body language, our voices have to work harder to convey emotion.
Right.
So she recommends exaggerating your tone and energy levels a bit.
It's like you have to dial up your personality.
Exactly. And just like eye contact is important in person, she stresses using the other person's name frequently during phone calls.
It makes them feel more connected.
Yes. And she even talks about being mindful of your outgoing voicemail message.
It's your first impression, even when you're not there.
It is. She suggests changing it daily to project an image of efficiency.
Oh, wow. I never thought about changing it every day.
Yeah, it shows you're on top of things.
That's a good idea.
And she also warns against having a voicemail message that's too long or gimmicky.
Right. Keep it short and sweet.
Concise, professional, and up-to-date.
Makes sense.
You don't want to lose someone before they even leave a message.
Definitely not. Okay, this is a good one. Dealing with gatekeepers.
Oh, yeah, those gatekeepers can be tricky.
So tricky. What does Lowndes suggest?
She has this technique called the sneaky screen.
Sneaky screens.
It's brilliant, really. So instead of directly asking to speak to the VIP,
Right.
you tell your staff to cheerfully say, "Oh, yes, I'll put you right through. May I tell her who's calling?"
So you're making it sound like you're a regular caller.
Exactly. You're setting the expectation that you'll be connected.
I see.
And then when the secretary comes back and says the VIP is unavailable,
Right.
the caller doesn't feel screened or rejected.
It softens the blow.
Exactly. Okay, now shifting gears a bit. We've talked a lot about techniques, but one of the most important things Lowndes emphasizes is that communication is about connecting with other human beings.
Yes.
And she has this fascinating section on understanding people's primary sense, whether they're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
But how does she apply it to communication?
She explains that people tend to process information and express themselves through their dominant sense.
Okay.
So visual people use a lot of visual language, like, I see what you mean.
Right.
Auditory people use auditory language, like, that sounds good. And kinesthetic people use language related to feelings and sensations, like, I have a gut feeling about this.
So you're speaking their language.
Exactly. You're connecting with them on a deeper level by using language that resonates with their experience of the world.
That's fascinating.
It is. And the book gives tons of examples on how to tailor your language to different sensory types.
I'll have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's really insightful. Wow, we've covered so much ground in this part.
I know, it's a lot to take in.
But don't worry, we've still got more to uncover in part 3.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We are wrapping up our exploration of how to talk to anyone.
Lots of great stuff in here.
So much, yeah. Ready for some more game-changing communication techniques?
Absolutely. Always ready for more.
Okay, let's jump into one that I thought was really interesting. The premature we.
Oh yeah, the premature we. It's all about creating a sense of camaraderie right off the bat.
Even if you don't know the person.
Even with someone you've just met. Like instead of saying, I hope the weather stays nice, you'd say, hopefully we'll have some more nice weather.
Oh, I see. So it's like you're already on the same page.
Exactly, like you're in it together.
A team. I like it.
It bypasses those initial stages of small talk and just creates that instant connection.
Instant rapport. Okay, this is one I know I need to work on. Tracking. Remembering and bringing up little details that someone has shared with you.
Oh yeah, tracking. It's so simple, but so powerful. People really appreciate it when you remember those seemingly insignificant things about their lives.
They do. It shows you were listening.
Yeah, like you actually care about what they have to say. I'm terrible at it.
Me too. I need to start taking notes or something.
Speaking of taking notes, that brings us to the business card dossier, which is especially helpful for anyone who does a lot of networking.
Business card dossier. Okay, what is that?
So after you exchange business cards with someone, you take a minute to jot down some key details on the back of their card.
Like what?
Anything that will help you remember them, really. Hobbies, kids' names, or something specific they said that stood out to you.
It's like creating your own little cheat sheet for future interactions.
Exactly. You're turning those brief encounters into more meaningful connections.
I love that. Okay, we've talked a lot about building rapport, but what about when you need to navigate a tricky situation or have a difficult conversation?
Well, that's where Echo the Emo comes in.
Okay, echo the emo. What's that?
It's about acknowledging and validating the other person's emotions, especially when they're negative. Instead of jumping in to fix the problem or dismiss how they're feeling, you just show empathy. So you might say something like, I understand why you're upset. This must be really frustrating for you.
You're letting them know you get it.
Exactly. You're hearing them. Lowndes gives an example of using this when she had a frustrating customer service issue. By letting the rep just vent and mirroring back her emotions, she actually de-escalated the situation and got the help she needed.
That's a good reminder that sometimes people just need to feel heard.
Absolutely. Before they can even think about solutions.
Okay, here's one I love. The buttercup.
The buttercup. Oh, yeah. It's such a simple but effective gesture.
Tell me about it.
It's basically a complimentary letter that you send to someone's boss praising their work. You're going above and beyond to show appreciation.
It's like a double whammy of praise.
It is, and people love it. Lowndes tells a story about how she used this to commend an assistant manager at Staples, who really helped her out. He was so touched that he treated her like a VIP every time she went back.
That's amazing. It shows you the power of those small gestures.
They can make a huge difference.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into how to talk to anyone, what's one key takeaway you want to leave us with?
You know, throughout the book, Lowndes keeps coming back to this idea that we're all constantly being evaluated.
Whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. She calls it the great scorecard in the sky.
It's like there's this invisible tally being kept of our interactions.
Right. We get points for our good moves, lose points for our blunders.
Makes you think twice about how you're coming across.
It does. And it's not just about making a good impression. It's about being mindful in our communication, being generous with our praise, forgiving of others' mistakes,
Being intentional with our interactions. That's powerful.
And honestly, we've just scratched the surface of what this book has to offer. There's so much packed in there.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for connecting with people.
Me too. And now it's up to us to put these techniques into practice.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into how to talk to anyone.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic we think you'll love.